ARK Survival Ascended, the Unreal 5 remaster of ARK Survival Evolved, has met its announcement to an overwhelming mix of confusion and upset, and whilst there may be a wealth of promises offered with this new venture, it needed to be understood. What exactly do the fans want? So we ran a poll, and here's your top 10 most important requests for ARK on UE5. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share around, and let's get into it. So, in at number 10, an obvious and great example entry. Despite some word-heavy blogs posted by the dev team, it's fair to agree words are just words, and promises can be broken, lest we forget examples such as Primal Survival and mobile app raid notifications, but most of all an understanding of Unreal 5 and the benefits it will provide for this remaster. The engine is still frankly in its infancy, with plenty of tech demos available, but barely many games harnessing the advantages of UE5 beyond Fortnite. A majority of the gaming community have yet to experience this new engine, so with little comparable against words of promise, a tangible example is an absolute must for this game. A demonstration by the dev team playing the game as intended and showcasing what this remaster really means for what we already know in ARK. In number 9, and not changed since 2017, character customization has moved on a long way since the game's initial arrival. For its time to remodel some unsightly survivor beasts were perhaps quite a refreshing arrival back then. Many open world games arrived since then have offered so many more improvements and refinements to detail your chosen character much more in depth than ever before. With the arrival of MetaHuman, a seamless companion to Unreal 5 offering essentially an inbuilt engine character creation tool, it's a hope that Wildcard may take advantage of this somehow. Nevertheless, customization improvements have already been promised by the team, with a wonder if this will affect physical creation as opposed to hairstyles and body art. In at number 8, and whilst community creature votes have become a popular mainstay, initiated with the arrival of Lost Island, whereby any factual prehistoric creature could be put forward to vote on its aesthetics and introduced into the game at a later date, with another happening right now at the time of writing, whilst welcomed the limitations to posting only real-world extinct creatures finds you requesting the freedom to suggest fantasy-based creatures. Currently, it appears all story-based DLC maps will be introduced with a brand new creature in ARK Survival Ascended, and with the maps exploring a much more fantasy-based reality and offering to exceed that limitation certainly deems so, though perhaps may still need to contain within some parameters to keep within some theme of each map. In at number 7, and arriving with this list, it appears of all the bugs encountered throughout the original game, the highly frustrated task of reloading and firing blanks seems to be at the top of the list. More commonly seen with the long neck and crossbow, though not restricted to the age-old bug of being stuck in reload limbo questions life itself, or rather the game code, that surely at this point there must be a reason for it not to have been fixed yet. But if so, should surely be a priority for the UE5 remaster. And with that, hit boxes. It's an understandable pain to lose dart after dart, bullet after bullet into the ironclad areas of what should be an all-around fleshy opponent, or perhaps it's invisible exoskeletons we just weren't informed of. With the hope of each creature being meticulously brought to a nanite life, a technology within the new engine to redefine exactly how skeletal meshes are created, it should be argued to expect when you shoot an ear, toe or tail, you're doing actual damage and making those expensive, shocking darts count. In at number 6, and an already promised feature to some degree, Wildcard have said to expect new things to build, mentioning only smaller tech teleporters and display cases at the time of writing, but it was mentioned by the team a planned shale tier was being introduced with the arrival of Genesis Part 2, an organic-based structure set that could regrow back in place, and was tested in mod map Titan by since-hired Codigo Alex. Sadly, scrapped due to memory limitations, and understanding that memory should be free now, it's a hope we may see this return, seeing the concept already exists. Nodding to the shale set, you'd like to see this across all structures to animate their construction plank by plank or brick by brick and see bases rise from the ground before your very eyes. Speaking of which, the developers have promised the ability to raise foundations higher than normal, allowing you to build on uneven ground, as well as improvements on how structures snap to each other, offering the possibility to be much more creative than simply snapping to the edge or middle of a foundation, something only game-breaking minds such as Captain Fat Dog have figured out to overcome until now. In at number 5, a nod to early ARK. You'd like to see content drip-fed more consistently throughout a new life cycle, as opposed to waiting for new maps to arrive with said content. Resonating with this, whilst each map may flip the game's progression with every arrival, the same feeling certainly hits the right notes with the arrival of new creatures to the same map. Of course, this was at a time where the game was in very early access, and a need to flesh out the map's offerings to a complete state the strategy then. But the arrival of content to the same map in smaller, consistent updates keeps it, well, evolving in a new, fresh outlook to rush for that new reward and look forward to what would arrive next. It could be argued perhaps you get that anyway with each map, but understanding weapon ideas in the past never made it to fruition for the original game, and customizable weapons coming to the sequel, could it be explored to introduce content here we've not seen yet? In at number 4, and ARK is big. Too big. Computers and consoles everywhere shed a small digital tear with the arrival of updates and maps. With all maps downloaded, console players can find upwards of 300 gigabytes needed. Combined with SOTIF and a few mods thrown in, can find over 500 gigabytes of that precious space required through Steam. There's been many an argument that the optimization of the game is to blame, and with the developers assuring the code base of the remaster will be completely rewritten, and some assurance Unreal 5 can benefit to compress games much easier, there's hope that perhaps we could find this version at a smaller size than its predecessor. Lest we forget, sister company Grove Street Games were able to compress the Switch port maps to barely 1 gig each. Noting, of course, that is the Switch port and not the fairest comparison, but hoping their knowledge in executing that combined with Wildcard's rewriting, there's a hope yet for something much more attractive to download and not need one dedicated memory storage device for just one game. In at number 3, surprising to see so highly suggested considering it already being promised, because that's indeed what's planned to be delivered. Dynamic navigation mesh and creature pathfinding overhaul, meaning we will find creatures able to navigate their way through trees and rocks, not stuck in a running man animation against the crevice they ran into, understanding their blockades and turning around or finding a new route, meaning whistled dinos may finally be useful to take out into the open without a worry of them being stuck behind. But also anything hunting you down will become much more difficult to avoid, so some scary nights in the jungle awaits. It's a hope with some improved collision on top that ridden creatures will react to their environments correctly, hit a wall to turn their head, but most importantly bounce off any creature they bump into rather than getting stuck inside of it and needing to dismount to whistle your creature out. The potential time saving for any mass breeder trying to unstuck their raising babies could be a standout feature indeed. In at number 2, another already promised by Wildcard, and a story almost every player will resonate with, flying at speed only to hit an invisible wall that finally renders into be a full-blown built base you didn't know existed. And in PvP especially, a big issue to wander too close to turrets you hadn't rendered in yet. And this is a huge advantage already demonstrated with Unreal 5, using a totally new mesh format and rendering technology to render pixel scale detail and high object counts within a virtualized geometry system. Plainly put, close up, everything will look super high detailed, but far away, objects are rendered differently at much smaller memory sizes, meaning you should be able to see as far as you can, and it shouldn't hurt your gaming experience. Time will tell, but large laggy bases could really be a thing of the past, allowing giant castle forts or kingdoms built and be actually playable in without dropping your graphics settings. And before we get to number 1, let's have a quick look at the suggestions that didn't just make the cut. And in at number 1, it comes at no surprise that should we be playing a game that explores the wonder of creatures, how they're tackled, ridden and used in combat, if we've already done all of that in ARK 1, then what's the point? Whilst we'll at least surely see the creatures we know remastered in high detailed glory, visibly seeing each hair follicle, skin scale and deepest whites of their eyes, a renewed reason to tame is a wanted feature. So far, it's been promised to find more breedable creatures as well as baby dinos out in the wild. But we want to see actual TLC, breathe new life into underused creatures. Some older models in particular look incredibly dated against their later map friends, and explore what abilities those creatures need to stand against the rest. TLC was such a welcomed feature when it arrived, and there's an obvious hope to see more of it, with an extension into bosses on top. A valid point that the Guardians of ARK are at a predictable point now, with most having an understanding on how to quickly beat these. Whilst Pathfinding might fix this to some extent, expectation to fear the unknown is a requested one. Remove predictability and define new methods to tackle the bosses of old. That being said, mods are coming to everyone, so variety could come in any shape a mod allows, and I hope maybe highly voted TLC like mods such as the Paleo Dino mod could be explored to integrate into the new official offering of ARK Survival Ascended. And that's it folks, top 10s are back, so what do you want to see voted on next? Comment below, let me know. My name's Raasclark, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and as always, peace out.